there's some kind of weird backhanded blessing of trials and difficulties in life. There's something good in there. There's totally a silver lining. It might not feel like that when you're in the midst of it, but the feeling of stress is the feeling of growth. So if you feel stressed in life, you're probably growing through that somehow.
All right, so here's something I've been thinking about. When you're starting a business, there's no confusion about your purpose. It's to make money, create stability, and take care of your family. But then one day you kind of get there. You've created that stability, you've created that foundation, and suddenly the thing that was pushing you forward, it disappears. And that's what we're figuring out here on the other side of enough. I'm sitting down with entrepreneurs who have hit their goals, but they're still searching for something more. We're talking about what business excellence really looks like on the other side. Let's get into it. I don't know how I was able to get the biggest name in the land business to spend an hour with me, so definitely appreciate your time, Seth.
Are they showing up here soon, or?
Seth, I think other than like Jack Bosch, I think you're the biggest name in terms of just being the like you're the Kleenex of the land podcasting space.
Yeah, maybe.
You're the biggest one.
You ask. Yeah, it's interesting. I think it depends on who you learned from or who you first discovered. And I just happened to be doing this at a time when there weren't as many people doing it, at least 5 years ago. Now there's a lot of people talking about it, but yeah, to some people, maybe they think that.
But what I think is cool is I talked with Justin Sleva from his podcast. Like, he's making a respectable middle class income just from the podcast.
Oh, cool.
And that's both him and Adam, his partner, both making middle class incomes. But sorry, I have this cold thing. I know that you're making serious money just from your podcast, which is very impressive because for a lot of us, and I would fall into that category, the podcast is more like some sort of passion project when the main source of income is the land business or whatever business you run. But for you, it's both, right? You make money from your land business. And I know you're very transparent about not being as active in deals, but the fact that you get to make content, which is your passion, and get paid to do it is so fun to watch, because I've watched you over the years. And I was on a group chat with you and the Florida guys, the Florida Mastermind, and some of your older videos came up where you look like 25.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That was like in the first year or so of me being a blogger or something. It's a long time ago. Yeah. It was almost embarrassing to see that. We got to start somewhere.
You've been hustling this whole time, over a decade, right? So I think it's great. And I want the audience to hear your story, because probably half the audience knows exactly who you are and the other half has absolutely no idea who you are. So why don't you share a little bit about some of your history? I would love for you to talk about some of the challenges you've overcome with the speech impediment, and then just fast forward to today and what life is like right now.
Yeah, sure. So you want to hear the story of how I got into land, how I started REtipster, where I'm at today, like that story?
Yeah, less focus on land, more focus on business, just general business.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So it'd be hard to get land out of there because it's just it's a big hinge point that has everything to do with where I'm at. But yeah, quick version of it. Discovered land in 2008, 2009 is when I got into it. I did that for about 5 years before I started REtipster. And I started REtipster because I had discovered another blogger in a totally different space, Pat Flynn from smartpassiveincome.com. At the time, he was writing amazing content that was totally free for the taking, and it was like life-changing, seriously useful stuff. And I saw what he was doing, and I thought, I could probably do that, but for what I know. Like I saw a lot of myself in him, and so I decided to give it a shot. And I started writing blog posts and making videos, and years later, I started a podcast, and it's like the funnest work I've ever gotten to do. Like it is every Monday. I cannot wait to get started at work. And I knew that when I discovered work that I enjoyed that much, that was a really special thing because I had spent many years working a job that I didn't really love that much. And it's just been a super rewarding thing to do that. And yeah, and land is crucial to that because I'd really have nothing to say if I didn't know anything about land. So that's kind of what informs a lot of it. And then I started getting into self-storage as well. So I started making content about what I was learning there.
That's right.
And really just anything that I write, I try to come at it from the angle of, I use this for land, but like this other guy over here might use this for houses. So how can I explain this in a way that both a land person and a house person or anybody out there can benefit from it? So I try to make it agnostic in terms of the investing strategy. I just want to make it useful, essentially.
And then self-storage is like this weird medium because it's structures, but people don't live in the structures.
Yeah.
So self-storage is like this weird hybrid between the two.
Yeah. The way that I did it definitely was because I bought it as land and then developed it. And through developing it, I learned a lot of lessons on that too. Like how do you develop something? How do you change the zoning of a property? How do you get the entitlements? How do you navigate through construction? Just a lot of lessons were learned. And a lot of money was spent to do this thing. It was a huge risk to do what I did. And we are officially in the black now. It's not losing money anymore after 3 years. But yeah, that's another awesome business. That's kind of where I'd like my preferred future to be, is more in that line, just because it's a
self-storage.
Yeah, it's a source of income that you can depreciate. So there's a lot of tax advantages, and it's a source of income that's permanent. It's not going to go away like a note will. It's something that I don't have to keep peddling. Like when you get it, like it's there, like just the money comes in. So there's a lot to offer in that respect.
And then you can sell it if it's doing a cash flow, right? You sell it at a multiple.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I'm going to sell it, but you could for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you found the land flipping business in 2008, started the podcast a couple of years later.
Yep.
So for the listeners not in real estate, Seth has the largest and most professional. It's more than a podcast. What would you call it? A media?
Yeah,
company?
So the three. Yeah, good question. It's interesting because it depends on. It's up to the end consumer. Like some people only listen to the podcast, and in their minds, that's all it is. Other people are mainly into YouTube, and they don't even know what the podcast. Other people just follow the blog. There's also a forum. There's a Facebook group. There's a newsletter. So there's a lot of stuff going on. It's a media company.
You do events now? You speak at events?
So, yeah. I go to other people's conferences, and I also do like smaller mastermind groups a couple times a year. So yeah, it's all over the place.
So he has the biggest, it's 4 a.m. here, so my brain isn't really working yet, but what's like the word for like an empire for the mafia?
You could use that. That's basically what this is.
It's like an evil syndicate or something run by rural.
I think I know what you mean.
Run by Michiganites. Okay, great. So you're running REtipster. I know you have a small team. You've also been running your land business.
You mentioned the speech impediment thing. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so I just think it's such an encouraging story. I just think like when people hear your story, it makes them realize that they can overcome their own obstacles, even if it's not a speech impediment.
Yeah.
And so why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll dive into some questions.
Yeah, the story on that is it was back in, I think I was like 22 or something, or 23, when I just gotten out of college. I was in the workforce, and I'd never had problems with this in my life. But all of a sudden, out of the blue, I developed this speech block, which is kind of like a form of stuttering. It's not the kind of stuttering where it's not that kind of thing. It's more of just, you'll be saying a sentence and this weird phenomenon happens where you're stuck. Like you can't get a certain word out and you're just stuck. And it was horrible. I have such empathy for people who like stutter big time throughout their lives, because, oh my gosh, it's a horrible affliction to be stuck with that. You don't really realize it until I didn't realize it until I was dealing with it firsthand, like how terrible it is to not be able to speak reliably. It's just, it's to the stress of trying to find and hold a job and just communicate normally. It's horrible. And I ended up working my way out of it. It's mostly just a mental game, honestly. It's 100% in your head, but that doesn't make it any easier to overcome. It's about trying to figure out how to unscramble the puzzle in your head and make it click. And the way that I did it was I went to one Dale Carnegie class where you're basically forced to speak in front of a group every single time in a really encouraging environment. I also joined Toastmasters, where the whole point of it is to speak in front of people. I basically found the thing that terrified me the most. And I'm like, we're going to do that. And we're going to do it and do it and do it and do it until it's normal. And I won't say that fixed it, but holy cow, did it help. Just the more you...
Now you're paid now to speak in front of people.
Sometimes, not always, but yeah.
So it's like you're now in the Olympics. Like you used to not be able to walk, and now you're running in the Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mind-blowing. And the interesting thing is, I still don't really consider myself a great speaker. Like when I record a video or something, it's pretty bad. I'm not stuttering, but like for me to like coherently get out a bunch of thoughts, there's a lot of editing that goes into that. I'll just put it that way. But all that matters is that the end product is good and people understand it. It's not that you ever have to like perfect this. It's just a way of figuring out how to get there through whatever challenges life throws your way. And everybody has them. That just happened to be one of the many ones that I had to deal with. So
I feel like a severe speech impediment would almost be equal to like losing your hearing or losing your sight, where you can't function in certain parts of society.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, it's interesting. I think losing your sight, in my opinion, would be worse, but
that's true.
I think it's more of like a confidence destroyer. Like it's just hard to do anything confidently in life.
Right.
When you can't even talk the way a 3-year-old talks. You can't even do that. How are you supposed to survive in the world? And the problem with stuttering is that thought process is exactly what makes it worse. It's like the spiraling thing. Like you have a bad experience, you get down on yourself. So the next experience is even worse. So you get more down on yourself. You got to break yourself out of the spiral, which is very difficult to do. It can be done, but you got to be really intentional about breaking that.
Speaking of losing your sight, did I tell you I had a doctor 6 months ago? I don't know, editor, if you could take out all these coughs I have. So, Seth, I had an eye doctor 6 months ago, and she tells me, she looks a little concerned, and she's like, yeah, there's like a small chance you'll slowly go blind as you age. Yeah.
What's going on?
And I'm like, okay. And so she was telling me how my optic nerve is oversized and my eye pressure is a little high, which means I guess my eye will slowly cut off the optic nerve, which will make I'll slowly go blind. So then I ask her, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to get a percentage, right? And she wouldn't tell me a percentage. And finally I said, okay, for every 10 people you tell this to at my age, how many of them will actually develop, it's called glaucoma. She's maybe 2. And so I'm like, okay, there's 20% chance, right? So then I go, and then she says, yeah, but we're not going to know for 10 years. So just come in once a year and check on it. And she's like, okay, see you later. And she just sends me home. So then I go home and I'm like, okay, what do I do with this information? I just now know I might slowly go blind. And after researching it, obviously there's very preventable things you can do. Like you could take eye drops. If it truly is an issue, you can take eye drops the rest of your life. But it was such a blessing in disguise, because when you have a doctor tell you, hey, you might go deaf, or you might go blind, or you might lose your ability to walk, then you're so grateful for your eyesight or your hearing or your legs. So like for months after that, I was like, oh, these trees are so beautiful. Oh, look at the sky, look at the sunset. And I'm just taking everything in. And obviously now it's 6 months later, I've forgotten about all that. But it was a huge blessing. And I feel like the same for you, Seth, with your speech. For you to be on this podcast right now and express exactly what you want to express, I bet you're so grateful for that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it is interesting because as time has gone on, man, I wish I wasn't like this, but like I do start to take it for granted. I don't look at life through the lens that you just said necessarily, where I'm like, oh, look at the blue sky, look at the birds. For a while, certainly. But after you can speak normally for long enough, it's just okay, whatever. It's fine. That's normal now. It's unfortunate that our human brains work like that. No matter how good life gets, we
Yeah.
just normalize it and we look, okay, what's next?
That's exactly why I started this podcast. That's
Yeah.
why we're here. You brought it full circle.
Is that a good segue?
Exactly. This podcast will have an intro, but just to tell you, really, this podcast is for me to explore a season of life I'm currently in. And the reason I'm interviewing you and Justin Sleva and a lot of the guys who are a little bit ahead of me is because you guys may have gone through this season, and I want to go through this discovery process and just make it public. Might as well have a conversation with someone, press record,
Yeah.
and share with others so that if anyone else is going through this season, then they can benefit at the same time. So let's go through these questions. Let me go back to our messages. So I had two types of questions. One was actually one that a set that Kendall Lejeune used to help refine the podcast, and then another set that I came up with. But let's start at the top. How would you define happiness? And do you think it's the same as contentment, fulfillment? And is happiness even something we should be pursuing? Or once you start chasing it, then you've missed the purpose?
Yeah. Yeah. Really good questions. I love these kind of existential conversations. Some people try to steer away from, but I love this stuff. So glad we're talking about it. So yeah, happiness, I guess when I think of that versus contentment versus fulfillment, I see them as related, but not necessarily the same thing. When I think of happy, it's almost like a high, like a feeling like, oh, I'm so happy. I'm zooming through the hills on my motorcycle. Man, I feel so happy right now. Whereas contentment and fulfillment go a bit deeper. It's more of, I can be having a bad day right now, but I'm still happy with my life, with where I am. Like I'm not miserable. Like I'm in a good place. I don't know if that makes sense in terms of the differences, but
Yeah.
For me, happiness is when I think of what gives me that kind of high, for lack of a better word. I feel like it's not the right word for it, and for me, it's like being able to do work that I love. It's like special moments when I become acutely aware that I'm happy right now.
Yeah.
Like hanging out with my kids and like, we're just having a great time and like, we're just in a good place. So yeah, that kind of thing.
I wonder if a good litmus test is if you knew you're going to die tomorrow and you had this deathbed reflection period,
yeah,
would you feel like you had a good life?
Yeah.
Not a life free of challenges and trauma and like painful things, but did you feel like you maxed out every moment and in general prioritized the right things?
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, I don't know if I've thought deeply enough about this, but happiness feels shallower somehow.
Yeah.
Like a more temporal, like doesn't necessarily last. I don't know. I think of, somebody like Mother Teresa or somebody who lived a heroic life. And you were to ask her, like, are you happy? And I don't know.
She'd slap you.
I know. She'd almost be like,
it sounds selfish. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, that's not even what I'm after in life. I'm more of what's a deeper good. And on her deathbed, like, I would think she would be thinking more about fulfillment from her life, not was I happy every moment of every day.
And she would even just say, did I serve enough or did I give it enough?
Yeah.
Kevin Rockwood, I think he was the one who said a better word is joy, right?
Yeah.
Because you can be joyful during a really tough season, but you're not going to be happy during that season.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Joy.
I don't know. A lot of Christian cultural words mixed in here. Okay.
Yeah, I think you were asking if it's, wrong to pursue happiness, or if that's was that one of your questions? Or
I think most of us would say that when you pursue happiness for the sake of happiness, you're missing the point. And it's like trying to like grasp at something. Like the minute you try to grasp at a cloud, it ceases to exist. Just enjoy the cloud. Just enjoy the cloud as it is.
Yeah, or even like to a lot of people, what they think is going to make them happy, it's elusive. Like they might start chasing after that thing, and when they get there, they realize, oh, really? Is that it?
That's why I started this. That's why I started the podcast, because there's a belief that if you can just quit your W-2, have control over your schedule, and make more than your W-2, then you'll be happy. And I think you and I are probably above average in our contentment, fulfillment, happiness, but it's not this like salvation where you've arrived. And even when you hit a point financially where you can maybe not work for 10 years or maybe retire in some frugal part of the world, the knowledge of that is a nice safety net. But again, you don't have some sort of an enlightenment moment where everything is just better.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember, I don't know, 15 years ago, I totally remember having those thoughts. Like if I could just make more money and not have a job, oh my word, so many of my life's problems would be solved. And it's not that's totally false. There's something to it. It's like the hierarchy of needs where it brings you to another level, but you totally still have problems. And it's not the answer to everything. It's more of it opens up more opportunities. Like your brain has more room to expand to places it wants to go. Yeah. And that's very nice. Like I love that. I would never want to go back to a job. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the total answer to everything. Yeah.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't actually set for this next question. I actually feel like I don't know you. I don't know which camp I'd put you in on this one. Okay. So let me just ask it. Studies show that drug addicts and entrepreneurs have exactly almost the same brains. So basically both groups are very obsessive. I don't want to use the word addictive because that has a lot of negative baggage, but both groups have brains that are very good at obsessing over things. Obviously, entrepreneurs have learned to channel that for things that are mostly positive. Do you believe that balance exists? And would you consider yourself an obsessive person? Because I think you're very balanced, but I don't know if you think you're balanced.
Yeah, I might appear that way because I'm not like hyperactive or anything. Like I'm a fairly low key, low energy person, I think in general. But yes, I can relate to that word, obsessive, for sure. I've always thought this. If I didn't have a wife and kids, I would probably spend all of my time working.
Yeah.
That's just all I do. Because for one, it's really fun for me. It's my version of play. But just there literally is always something else I can do. Like the list just goes on forever. And I think I'm a little bit less obsessive today than I was 10 years ago because I was a lot hungrier back then. And there was more of a sense of urgency and desperation. Got to get ahead. Whereas like I don't want to say I'm like totally comfortable, but I'm more comfortable than I used to be. And so from that end, like things have evened out a little, but there's still that obsessive element to me. And it's interesting. A lot of my friends, if you're at all familiar with the Enneagram test, one of the types, type 3, the achiever.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is.
Me.
Yeah. Like most of my friends are type 3s and most of the entrepreneurs I know are type 3s. They're that achiever. I'm not. I'm actually one of the few people I know that's not that. I'm a type 6.
You're a 5 or a 6, right?
Yeah. But yeah, there's this weird thing where like a lot of entrepreneurial people and people that I know, they're just super into achieving stuff, which is like a huge superpower. And they get really far in life, but I wonder if there's some correlation with that too, where there's this desire to do more and be great and accomplish great things.
Oh, definitely. It's the greatest asset and greatest curse, greatest blessing, greatest curse at the same time.
Yeah.
So like I find myself, whoever is the most successful person in that little silo, I compare myself to them.
Yeah.
Right. So Callan, she's the best at marketing or something, or Seth, right? So then I'm like, I actually don't compare myself I find I only compare myself to people who are within plus or minus 1 year of age to me, which is like, why did I choose that? But anyways, so I don't compare myself to you because you and I are more than 1 year apart. But like Justin Pichet, Callan, anyone who's the same age, whatever they're better than me at in that category, I choose to measure myself against them. And then whatever I'm better at them, I dismiss it as it doesn't count. And then I like choose to compare myself to somebody else who's better than me. It's this horrible Enneagram 3 game of like never being enough.
Yeah. No, I'm familiar with that. Yeah. I think I don't know if that ever goes away. And that's actually why whenever there's somebody that I've identified as my proper competitor, like, we both do the same thing.
Yeah.
Someone's going to be better, or whatever that is. I almost go out of my way to try not to pay attention to them because I know it'll just bug me. I'll start nitpicking myself and comparing. It's just not fun. It's not a good place to be. I try to avoid it when I can. It's because I know it's not healthy for me.
Yeah, it's super unhealthy. And they say that comparison is the thief of joy. I do think there's a certain amount of healthy competitiveness, but how do you tap into the healthy part of it and shed the unhealthy part? I don't know.
Yeah.
What I know is super unhealthy. So there's a friend that I went to college with. His name is Garrett Lord. He's the founder of Handshake.
Oh, cool.
And Handshake is it's like the LinkedIn for college students. And so he's the same age as me, went to the same college, probably similar childhood, but he's literally 1,000 times wealthier than me. And why do I even compare myself to him?
Yeah.
But I've chosen to do that sometimes in unhealthy mindset seasons. Yeah. And it's such a dumb thing to do.
Actually, it's really interesting. Just last night, YouTube showed me this video interview between a guy named, I think his name was Arthur Brooks, I think was his name, and Jordan Peterson. And they were talking about this test you can do to figure out what your God is. And the exercise goes, I'm going to try to remember how it this. They was asking Jordan Peterson, there's 4 things you got to choose from. There's power, money, pleasure, or honor. And which of those things are you most willing to part with? Like, it doesn't matter to you at all. You could lose it and it's not a big deal. And Jordan Peterson was like, probably power, because I don't really have a desire to force my will or make anybody do what I want them to do. So that's the first thing I'd let go.
Okay.
And then the next thing is probably money. It's probably my next one to let go. And then pleasure was the next one. So the last one on the table is honor. Okay, there you go. Now you know what your God is. That's the one thing that you will compromise to get more of that. It matters that much to you that you're not willing to part with it. And I thought that was really interesting because I think whatever that is for you, it's like that's your Achilles heel. That's the thing that you're basically going to worship, because we as humans are designed to worship something. Something will be worshipped. It's just a question of, are you going to be intentional and smart about that? Or is it just going to happen to you? I feel like that's what most of us do.
But so is the antidote just be mostly in a state of worshiping God?
I think that's the ideal situation, but I think the point of the exercise, it's similar to the point of the Enneagram test, is just to be aware of your weaknesses and know, like, when my brain starts going down this path of comparing myself to somebody else, like, that is a common characteristic of type 3s. And I should instantly know.
Type 3s when they're unhealthy.
Yeah, that's one of my documented weaknesses. And I need to know this isn't normal for me to do that. It's a problem. Right. And I can identify that and deal with it. But it's hard to deal with something when you don't even understand why it's happening or that it's happening.
But I think there is a healthy, like, I thought of a good example for an Enneagram 3. So Peter Nukasani and I have both been talking about starting a podcast for a few months.
Yeah.
And he launched his a few weeks ahead of me. And his is different. He does these little 5-minute self episodes. He showed me, we were in the cigar lounge in LA a few weeks ago, and he shows me he's got 5 episodes out. And I told him, I'm like, I'm gonna beat you. And so I recorded 8 episodes within 1 week just to like beat him.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a healthy, because it was this fun little, I actually texted him when you guys were in Florida together. But it was this fun little competition, and obviously his podcast is so different than mine. There's no point in comparing it, but I think it's important to know like the healthy ways to channel your strengths, and then when you're doing it in an unhealthy way, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think it is that are you after like those four things from the Jordan Peterson example? Is honor what you're after? You want to be like
what's
seen in high
honor?
esteem, or
Oh,
it's kind
honor's
of, kind
like
of like
being respected.
if somebody comes up to you on the street, oh, Drew, you changed my life. I just so respect what you do. Like, you're just an amazing person. I wish I could be like you. Is it that kind of thing? Like admiration?
That's probably two or three. I don't know. I'm trying to think what the least. I probably care less about pleasure and power. So if I were to create this little world where I could control everything, what I would do is just build some massive machine to make as much money as possible. And I don't even want to spend the money. I just want to make it just so I could see it.
Yeah. What do you think
So
is behind the money? Like, is it the security? Is it knowing, oh, I can do this because of this?
I'm sure there's some side things like that, but I really think that some of us were just the way our brains work. Money is simply a metric for keeping score in a
Yeah. The
game.
scorecard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It, I feel like a lot of men and women who make a ton of money, like once they've bought the simple luxuries that they wanted, they bought the Porsche and the Rolex, like they're done with the spending spree, and really they just like to know that they did it. They solved a problem in the economy. And I don't know, like in college, so my major was business. In college, we had this class where we had to go into it was a business simulator where you tweak all these metrics in your virtual business,
Yeah. I did
and
that too.
yeah, we
Yeah.
probably did the same one, and you're competing against other college students across the country. And I would have played that game for free just because it was so much fun. And so I wonder if we move to some sort of utopian society where everyone had plenty and everyone's needs were like filled. I would still, and then money became this fake thing that wasn't real. I would probably still play the business game because I just enjoy the game for what it is.
Yeah.
And money is just like a metric for if what you're doing is working or not, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you have to go, by the way? I know it's the top of the hour.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Hey, let's move on to another one.
Yeah.
We're an hour in and two questions in. Okay, so you talked about this briefly, but I want to dive into it more. Is it a two-dimensional spectrum between quality family time and focus on building your business? Are those two at opposite extremes on a spectrum?
It kind of seems like it, unless somehow your family is in your business. Somehow you're doing both at the same time. But
Yeah.
my current situation is it's not really, I guess my wife does my accounting work, although I wouldn't usually call that quality time necessarily. It's just work that's got to be done. Yeah, it feels like two opposite ends of the spectrum, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. What do you think?
That's why I'm asking the question, because I'm hoping for an answer that I haven't gotten yet. The answer that everyone has said and that I would agree with is it is a give or take. Your mental bandwidth is finite. However, I did listen to a podcast recently that kind of challenged that, where his point was like, if you're talking about work-life balance, then it's the mindset is the wrong focus, where you believe that free time has to be at the cost of work, or work has to be at the cost of free time, right? And his point was like, why can't it all be blended together? Imagine 500 years ago, when you have some sort of profession that's like a trade, wouldn't that kind of be built into your life anyways? If you're a blacksmith, aren't you eating dinner with your family in the I don't know what you call it, the fire area or something?
Hmm.
Aren't you, isn't your wife like helping move firewood, right? And while she's moving the firewood, like you're talking with her and bonding with her. Aren't your kids like using the horseshoes that you made? I don't know.
Is that what you consider quality family time? Like that's the best way you can give them your attention is by making them help you with your work. It
I
seems like
think
a
that
compromise to me. Like it's not nothing, but I wouldn't say like that's how I'm gonna build the best relationship with my kids. I don't know.
I think modern day quality time is very intentional, which I think is needed because we have devices now. Where like right now I'm staring at a computer screen interacting with somebody else. And if my kids were awake, they would not be getting my attention.
Yeah.
But back in the day, if you're a blacksmith and you're hammering away at a piece of metal and you've done it for decades, you could probably have quality time and be working at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
There
do,
probably is a version of that somehow. Yeah,
yeah,
possibly.
I do think modern day attention, like looking your kids in the eye and actually having real quality time, I think you can't be working as you're doing that.
Yeah. I actually read this thing. I don't know if this relates or not, but it's coming to mind. Apparently, the word priority, the first time that ever showed up was sometime in the 1500s, and it was a singular word. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until the 1900s that we started trying to change it into a plural word of priorities. And it's impossible to do that. There can only be one priority at a time. There's only one thing that
Yeah.
you can do. And to try to say, oh, yeah, I'm going to lump this all together. These are my priorities. It's like, okay, but only one thing is at the top right now. It's the thing you're doing. And this idea of making a priority list is actually dumb and it's pointless. You
Yeah.
don't need a list. Your priority list is whatever you're doing with your time. Whether you have written that out or not, like whatever you're doing, boom, that's your priority. If it's something dumb, hey, you got to fix your priorities, but that's what it is. You can't change the fact that's what you're doing.
I wonder if that's why the Bible says, seek first the kingdom and all these things will be added to you. So
Yeah, probably.
I think we've all gone through a season, like if you're a faith-based entrepreneur, you've gone through a season where you've been really in sync with God. And when you're in that season, everything just seems to naturally fall into place. So maybe that's how it's supposed to be all the time. And I know that's not reality.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's sometimes it feels like it naturally falls into place, but like when it doesn't, like I still feel a sense of peace about it. It's like it's okay. Whereas like when
Yeah.
I'm just going after life on my own and it doesn't work out, that's when like anxiety really goes through the roof. Because it's up to me. I got to figure this out. I'm on my own. Nobody else can be trusted. Yeah, when you're in sync with God, it's I don't know. It brings this peace that transcends understanding, as the Bible says. Oh.
What I do is if I get overwhelmed with anxiety or stress, I picture that I'm kneeling in front of God's throne or whatever, and I'm holding in my hands all of the things that are stressing me out, and I dump this pile of items onto the throne, like near his feet, and I basically say, God, you like this is your responsibility. This actually isn't my problem. And that's what the Bible says. It says, cast all your cares on me, right?
Yeah.
And after I do that, I feel a lot of peace. Then maybe the next day I have to do it again. But at least for that moment or for a few hours afterwards, I just know deep down inside, if the ship crashes, that's like God promised to provide for us. So it's actually his problem. Obviously, I'm not going to crash the ship on purpose, and I need to raise the sails and I need to do things that are responsible. But I feel like we think about the time when Jesus was on the boat, right? And he was slipping down in the boat and there was a storm. And then the disciples are freaking out and Jesus goes up on board and he calms the storm, right? Sometimes I think, okay, Jesus controlled the weather, but what if the disciples forgot to bring the sails or the oars? Like, how much of it is dependent on us doing our responsibility? And then I realized, even if they forgot that stuff, Jesus could literally, if he could walk on water, he can make the boat move without sails.
Yeah.
So it makes me think that then we should do our best, but even if we screw it up, like God can still salvage that and make it right.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I have similar questions in life. I know God is part of this. Where does my work stop and where does his work start? And if I stop too soon, am I doomed? Or can he redeem that still? Will he redeem that? Just because he can doesn't mean he will. Yeah, it's a mind game to think through it. I don't know all the answers. I wish I did.
Yesterday, we've been going to this, even though we're in Japan, we've been going to this pizza place here in Kyoto. It's this brick-fired, like super small. They only have 4 tables, and it's ran by a married couple. I assume they're married. They seem same age, and they seem to work well together. And I was telling Renee, I'm like, because we were there on a Monday, and it was a little bit emptier than normal. And I was telling her, what a bummer if they spend an hour heating up the wood-fired stove or oven, and then nobody comes in. Like they prep, there's so much restaurant prep needed, and then nobody comes that night.
Yeah.
And Renee was saying, I believe so much in God's mercy and his grace that if nobody came in that night, she was saying, I really believe God would send angels to be their customers. So maybe he does that. Maybe we have angels doing land deals with us. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that because I have done things like that in life where I've expended massive amounts of effort and time into something, created it for the world, and then nobody wanted it. It was truly a waste, financially speaking. There's no way it's going to come out of the red. Does that mean?
But isn't there things you've taken from that? Financially, yeah, in that metric, but didn't you learn from it? You grew from it. It wasn't, because I could say like me going to ranger school, hurting my back, I could say that was a waste of a year of training. But if I hadn't have failed out of ranger school, I would have never met my wife.
Yeah.
Or I spent 5 years day trading. I spent 50 grand at education and I was unsuccessful. And then as I quit day trading, the institution that taught me was sued by the federal government for teaching vanilla stuff. So I could say I just wasted 5 years and 50 grand. But because of the day trading, I feel very comfortable with land deals. And the risk in the land business is so much less that I feel like it was such a superpower. And at the time, I felt like it was a waste. But in hindsight, I know it was such a blessing. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't think anything's ever wasted, but it's a good question.
Like it worked out for you, for sure. Yeah, I'm sure there's something I got from it. But if I had just done something else or smarter or better or different, probably would have gotten a lot more. I don't know. I feel like it's a way of trying to chalk up some sort of meaning to my wasted effort. Because I'm sure there was something there, but like the truth is, there's probably something better I could have done with my time. I know that now. I didn't know that then. Maybe that's the lesson, is learning to not do what I did again.
Yeah. Or you never know. You could die and then in heaven, some guy comes up to you and he's like, hey, remember that project you did that felt like a waste and you only got one view? That radically changed my life.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point.
All right. Let's go through a couple more of these. Oh, here's a good one. So maybe this makes you uncomfortable, but have you ever gotten bored of REtipster?
That's a good question.
Or maybe not bored of REtipster, just bored in your season of life.
Yeah, I feel like bored is too strong of a word, but there was a time, I think it was in like mid 2023. Again, I don't know if bored is the word I'd use, but I almost felt like this weird sense of depression because I just felt, I don't know, trying to dissect why I was even feeling that. I don't even know. can't even tell you why, but it was just this feeling of depression. And I feel like maybe it came as a result of getting too comfortable. Because I do think that's one thing I noticed through trying to analyze what was happening back then a couple years ago, is that in my life, I've never felt that when I was like hungry or like just chasing after something. Like depression is not compatible with that. It's almost like you need some kind of pain or hunger or something. It's almost like we're supposed to have that in life. Like you don't want to get too comfortable or too successful. Like you need to keep trying to push the limit and see how you can improve yourself. I just don't think it's healthy to get, I don't know, successful or whatever you want to call it, that you don't think of anything else you want to do next. And it was a weird season. So I don't know if that was boredom or what that was, but interestingly, in 2024, for a lot of people, myself included, business just started getting way harder in every conceivable way. And it kind of kicked me into this maybe panic mode, for lack of a better word, just because like things weren't working the way they always had. And I didn't know what was going on. And mysteriously, I didn't feel depressed. I felt like a sense of urgency to like, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out. And it almost reminded me of like the early days of business when I was just like, what do I do? Like, how do I make this work? It's kind of the feeling I felt a lot last year. Yeah. And it's actually, in hindsight, like in the moment, it wasn't that fun. But as I look back, like it kind of was fun. Like I learned a lot of new stuff and figured out new ways of doing things and expanded my mind and did things I didn't think I'd ever do. Not in a bad way, in a good way, just to make things work better. So there's some kind of weird backhanded blessing of trials and difficulties in life. There's something good in there. There's totally a silver lining. It might not feel like that when you're in the midst of it, but the feeling of stress is the feeling of growth. So if you feel stressed in life, you're probably growing through that somehow.
Yeah. You talked about this, but so being bored and slowing down and coasting, you mentioned that's not great, right?
Yeah.
But we also talked about this Enneagram 3 thing of like constantly striving and whenever you hit a level, it's never enough. So what's the sweet spot in between those two extremes?
Yeah, it's a good question. My wife, one of our tension points we often have is I'm always trying to do the next cool thing. What am I going to do now? I got to buy this or develop that or fix this, or to not be pushing things forward. It just feels depressing and pathetic and hopeless to me. Like I want to be developing and improving in some way, somehow. And she's kind of the opposite, where like she can just kick back and relax. She doesn't need any of that. She's happy to just retire early, just sit on the beach and just relax, just read a book. And that sounds like hell to me. Like I would much rather be like doing something. I think maybe we're created with that purpose. I don't know if it's, I don't want to say it's a gender thing. It's not like men are this way, but people in general, I think are meant to work. Sometimes we look at it as a curse, but Adam worked in the garden before there was sin in the world. That's what he was built to do. And I feel like if I'm not doing that, I'm missing part of the point of it. Like that's why I'm here, to do some kind of work, preferably work that's redeeming and valuable to the world. But yeah, so I don't think it's necessarily bad to do that. It's just maybe a matter of you need some kind of gauge to know when you're getting to an unhinged, unhealthy level. What I was saying earlier, like working all the time, every day. That's probably not healthy, but I honestly don't know where the line is. I don't know when I'm going too far, because as long as I'm not miserable, I'm good.
That's why your wife like balances you out, right? I do think you said it's not tied to gender. I do think it mostly is. Obviously, there's very high performing women out there.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed for the most part, and this is anecdotal, this is just me coming up with conclusions myself, but I feel like men, we were created to work and we really enjoy it. And women were created like they're beautiful as they are. Like they don't need to produce to be beautiful. But men, you can't have a man who's a father and a husband like goofing around, earning part-time salary and just like kicking back and enjoying his life, right?
Yeah.
But like my wife, she spends her days homeschooling the kids, learning languages for fun and baking bread. And that is totally like she's enough as she is. She doesn't need to be any different. And so the way I think about it is like men are the sidewalk, like practical, but like very boring and gray. And women are the flowers along the sidewalk, like colorful and just beautiful just as they are. And they don't need to work. They don't need to produce. They don't need to strive. And I do think there's a difference, but I know that's controversial and it offends people.
Yeah. That's actually really interesting. I never thought about that. Yeah. If you look at, again, assuming you take the biblical perspective, I realize not everybody does, but if you do, and if man was created to serve his family and protect his family and do all that, and if a woman was created to bear children is one of many things, but if you understand like what was the purpose of each gender, if there was one, that would explain why women aren't driven to succeed and build, because that's not really what they were made for. It wasn't their primary purpose. I actually saw this interesting YouTube video a few weeks ago. I'd never heard this before, but apparently in the Bible, in Genesis, when it's talking about when God created woman, the English translation that we know of refers to the woman as a helper. And if you actually understand the original context of
it's actually rescuer.
Yes, exactly. Rescuer. And I was like, whoa, that's like totally different than helper. Not totally, but it's a very different context when you use that word versus just a helper. And what you talked about there in terms of me knowing where the line is, when am I working too much? There's my wife. She's the rescuer. Right. Like she's there to see when I'm going off the rails, and holy cow, if I didn't have her, like where would my life go? That'd be a disaster. She's absolutely my rescuer for sure.
Yeah. Well, just yesterday we were at a playground here in Kyoto, and our kids were actually, one kid was napping in the stroller. The other kid was playing. And my wife and I were talking about, she was asking me about my business, and she basically said, Drew, I'm always going to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And she's just so encouraging. And it's true. She's always believing in me more than I believe myself. It's like without her, things would be very dull and gray. And I'm so grateful. One interview I saw, Shaq was on some talk show, maybe Ellen or something. Shaq has 3 boys and 3 girls. He's got 6 kids. And he explained it in a way that is so simple, but it makes so much sense. He said, I forgot who was interviewing him, but he said when his boys turn 18, he tells them, you turn 18, you out. Like he kick them out of the house, right? And he says, what he says to his daughters, he goes, baby, you can stay as long as you want. And I think there is different expectations, right? I have 2 daughters, but I feel like if I had a son, I will be much more harsh to him in certain areas. Like he can't just F around and play video games and like work at a grocery store his whole life, right? That ain't gonna cut it. But if my daughters wanna live near me their whole life and they want to learn languages and bake bread and serve in the church and make 20 grand a year, like serving in some capacity they feel called to, I think that's great. That's awesome. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Do you think you have, is it lower expectations of daughters or is it different expectations?
I think it's completely different.
Yeah.
If I had a son, you better make money and be able to kick someone's ass. You better be ready to go to war if your country calls you to go to war. You're not going to say that to a daughter. Like the daughter is, you are absolutely perfect as you are. I don't know. It's different.
Yeah.
And people are I'm going to get some hate on this, but that's how I feel at 5:22 a.m. on Tuesday morning.
I expect you to have perfect clarity about everything you're thinking. Yeah, so that's interesting because I would argue, how old are your daughters now?
6 and 3.
Okay. So maybe this will develop as they get older. My daughter is 10 right now, and I feel like it's continuing to develop as I see her get older, but I think I do have expectations of her. They're just not what they would be for a son. Of course, I would never expect her to go to war or anything like that, but like, I would kind of hope that she would be a supportive wife someday, or a good friend, be a
Of course,
decent person.
that has nothing to do with producing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Does it? How do you define producing? I think I agree. It seems
Like,
to make
if
sense.
this is not fair, but if men don't produce, we are not valuable in society.
Yeah.
You don't look at a man who's at home not working and say, you're just as beautiful as you are.
Hmm. So you're saying if your daughters were to have no aspirations to get a career or get married or do literally anything, like they just wanted to read books the rest of their lives, you'd be totally fine with that?
No, I think if they're living out who they are, they're going to be the flower and the color in everyone's life they touch.
And how do you know who they are? Like, how do you know that's what you're actually seeing? What if they're just following some weird temptation or something that isn't really who they're supposed to be?
I don't know. I have no idea.
No.
I just know, like, at this moment, I'm so pleased with both of them. And of course, they're not perfect. And of course, they have areas where I'm coaching them, but I'm so pleased with exactly who they are, and they add so much color, and they're living out who they're created to be, right? Versus I feel like if I had a son, which I don't, I feel like my expectations would just be completely different. I don't even want to say different metrics. Just, it would be different.
Yeah. I think some of that might be informed by their personality and who they are as a person. Because to just lump all males into the same boat is like, you're all the same. You're all expected to do the same thing. I know certain males out there that are very different from my son. They have different strengths and weaknesses than him. Yeah, I don't know. Kind of just depends who they are. You can kind of assess what their
Yeah.
apparent weaknesses are as you get to know them better.
Yeah. And I don't have sons, so like I'm speaking in a vacuum.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if I had sons, I would be happy with exactly who they are too. But I do feel like there are different expectations society has, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I just try to be careful whenever I hear somebody say, just do whatever makes you happy. Because I think there are things that we feel that are very bad for us and are very detrimental to our well being, but we like it and we're happy. So it is important to differentiate like actual objective right and wrong from what happiness is. Because, like, I'm happy doing a lot of terrible things in the short term and I shouldn't do them.
That's why men destroy cities.
Yeah.
Like, you don't ever have a gang of women burn down a city.
Yeah.
So I don't know. If I
They
told
can
my
do
wife,
other evil things, believe me.
that's true. Okay, so if I told my daughters, hey, just do all day long, just do whatever makes you happy. Obviously, they'd eat candy and watch videos. But if I told my wife, actually, I've told her before, I just want you to be happy. Do whatever you want. And she does very productive things all day long.
She's had the benefit of however many years of life to understand that certain things lead you to a bad place.
That's true. Very true. We went off on a tangent there. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Let me ask one more. What if actually, this might not be applicable to you because you're not really an Enneagram 3, but
I have some tendencies there, but that's not my primary one. What was the question?
so what if we get to the end of our lives and regret not taking enough risk? Because the normal question is, what if I get to my end of my life and I regret not spending enough time with family? Like, we know that's the right answer. But part of me wonders if you can over focus on that. And at the end of your life, you feel like, okay, I played Junior Monopoly so many times with my kids, and I didn't try that business idea I had.
Yeah. It's actually a very interesting question to ask me because I actually feel that way, believe it or not. Like I spend a lot of time with my kids.
Yeah.
Pretty much any moment that I'm not working and that they're not asleep, my time is theirs. Like I'm literally with
Yeah.
them that entire time. I'm At least if my life keeps going the way it is, I'm 100% confident I'm not going to have that regret of, man, I wish I would have spent more time with them. Because I honestly think I do a lot. I can see why a lot of people feel otherwise, but I don't feel that way. So for me, it actually is more of what you're talking about. And I can't even blame it on my kids. That might be part of it sometimes, but it's more of just my own like overcautiousness. Like, yeah, but this could go wrong or that could go wrong. Or what if this blows up? And just talking myself out of lots of legitimately great opportunities. So yeah, there probably will be things there are things, certainly. I can already point back to in the past and be like, man, I should have done that. What was I thinking? It's so obvious now in hindsight.
That's what I think about because I also spend a ton of time with my kids. I work from home. My kids are now, I guess they're homeschooled, but they're enrolled in the public school still. They do this online curriculum. But I spend so much time with them. And I don't feel like I'll have regrets of not spending enough time with my kids. But I do wonder if I won't, like if I'll have regrets not taking enough risk, playing it too safe.
I would say, so what? Like, what if you had taken the risk? What if you had made more money? What would you have done? Like, it's a scorecard anyway, right? It's not even about the money.
I don't think I guess I'm contradicting myself, but it's not really about the money. It's trying something really hard and seeing if it works. Have you seen the movie War Dogs?
No, I've heard of that though.
It's with a Jonah Hill guy, and it's essentially about these guys in their early 20s who just wing it and they learn how to bid on government contracts for weapons, and then they sell them. Who do they sell them to? So they essentially get paid by the US government to find weapons across the world and sell them to the US government, right? So the US government will be like, we need 1 million grenades in Afghanistan in 2 years. And the contract will be for, I don't know how much grenades cost, but contract would be for like 10 million bucks. And then they'd go out and find 1 million grenades for 5 million. And then obviously you have to ship them and stuff, and then they'd resell them to the government for 10 million. And that movie, to me, they go through all kinds of, they get shot at and they go through all kinds of trouble. To me, that movie is like the essence of adventure that I want in my life. And I don't know. I don't have that, obviously. I'm not getting shot at in the Middle East. But
so it's actually adventure that you're after. It's not necessarily monetary gain.
Probably, yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Does it have to come in that form? Like a business adventure? Does that have to be or could it be, yeah, I should have gotten a motorcycle or something?
I have a motorcycle.
A faster one.
Yeah. So I've had someone say to me before, Drew, just get a dangerous hobby, an extreme sport, and that'll fill your adventure needs, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can operate a boring business and you don't need to keep taking business risks to feel alive, right? But I feel like that's so dangerous for me to feel alive through an extreme sport. Like how long until I crash my motorcycle or go off a jump on my mountain bike and smash my head? I don't know.
Yeah. Have you ever, I don't know if there's any like nonprofits or like missions that you believe in, but I know years ago I learned about Compassion International and World Vision.
Yeah.
And to me, it's, I don't know, when you get a feel for like how bad poverty is in some parts of the world and how hopeless people's lives are, like it kind of gives you this other reason to live. That's holy cow. That's something I believe in. Now there's a point to making all this money is to make their lives better. Do you have something like that?
Yeah. So we have a nonprofit, Renee and I do, and we're very generous and it's definitely a high priority, which I guess we talked about priorities are, shouldn't have priorities, but I've done a lot of short-term missions and I had multiple compassion kids where you read them letters and stuff. And then I actually visited one of their compounds. I don't know, one of their programs.
Yeah.
In Africa.
Nice.
And I realized that it's all kind of this, like it's not real in the way you think it is. Yeah. So the kid that you sponsor, they make you believe that if you don't sponsor this kid, they won't get school supplies and food. But in reality, the whole village is taken care of.
Yeah.
And your sponsorship money just goes into a huge bucket. And all
Gotcha.
you're really doing is like paying for this program, and you have a pen pal.
Interesting.
And they're doing great things. To me, it just felt misleading. And then
Yeah.
with
That
short-term
kind of
missions,
checks out. Although
yeah,
something I've been doing is we actually send them family gifts and they actually make an accounting of you sent them this much, and they send you a picture of the kid with the thing that they bought. So at least I can feel happiness about that beyond the
yeah,
giant bucket that my money went into. But that's interesting to know,
that's
though.
true.
Appreciate you sharing that.
I do think it's good. And I had a compassion kid for over a decade, and it's weird. You feel like, I don't want to say trapped is the right word, but you feel bad if you drop their sponsorship.
Yeah, it
Because
is
then you're
kind of a
like,
commitment.
yeah, you're like, okay, is this kid not going to eat? And for me, it wasn't the monetary commitment, but it was the realization of I moved so much for the army. We still move a lot. I'm gonna be writing this kid every month for the next 20 years or 18 years. Well, I guess not 18 years, but let's say the kid's 10. So I'm gonna be writing this kid for the next 8 years, and I'm gonna have to do a change of address. And I don't know, it just sounds exhausting when you think about it.
Yeah, I only do it like 2 or 3 times a year. But an interesting thing they do, though, your point about feeling trapped, they've done this to me, both World Vision and Compassion, is when your time is up with one kid, like when you pay them all the way through high school or whatever, they don't really tell you until they like, hey, by the way, we've rolled your subscription into or your sponsorship into this next child. Here's their picture. Look who
Yeah,
you're helping now. So it's like they don't ask you, so do you want to be done after this? It's more like they just let you know that the next kid is, and so now you have to screw them over if you want to stop. So it's
yeah,
almost like you have to see it coming and tell them like multiple times, hey, I want to be done after this, and then feel bad about
right.
that. So I don't know. It's interesting psychology hack they do on you.
I know. So I've seen their program, and I do think that feeding children and educating them and loving them the way Jesus loved children is absolutely wonderful. However, I wonder with poverty how much handouts are hurting versus helping, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer is other than like me going there and setting up my own program that I think is better.
Mm.
I just I've seen so many times where people get dependent on handouts and they they get comfortable. And
Yep.
they say that Africa is the most resource rich continent in the entire world, right? So it's not that they have a lack of natural resources. There's other issues at play. And that whole conversation is like attempting to solve world hunger, and I think that's above you and I, but I have some doubts on the current way we're doing it. I don't think I have a good solution either.
Yeah. Yeah. It does sound like a problem we're not going to figure out for sure.
Sir, we've covered a lot. Um, why don't we talk about what you've got going on next? Any plugs you want to make, any events that you're either running or attending, any projects you're working on that you want everyone to know about?
Yeah, good question. So, yeah, neither of these things are, I don't know when this is getting published, but neither of these things are like final or done yet. But Mike Balcom and I have been working on putting together a CRM for land investors called Stride CRM,
Okay.
stridecrm.co. At the time of this recording, it's not ready yet, but it's almost ready. So that'll be out there pretty soon. So basically just trying to make a good solution that solves a lot of problems for land investors. So it's not the first land CRM out there, but we're hoping to
Yep.
make the most useful one. So
Cool.
there's that. Also
Well,
working
I
with,
know Mike. I know
yeah,
Mike and I know you, and I think you guys together will build an excellent product.
yeah, yeah, I hope so. Mike's a genius, and he's really good at things that I'm not as good at. So it's, I don't know, it's been a good partnership so far. He's been a great guy to work with, and excited to see what comes out of that.
Yeah.
Also working with the guys at the Apke brothers at the Land Portal on expanding that software and what that's all about. Have you used the land portal at all?
I have not.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. It's the best combination of features and tools I've seen of anything out there in terms of what a real estate data service should be. It was built for land investors first, which is very rare. It never happens. Usually land investors are an afterthought. But yeah, so working with them on trying to develop and improve that product. If anybody wants to get 1,000 free exports from the software, you can sign up through my affiliate link, retipster.com/land portal. But it's worth checking out. They've got things like you can measure properties based on the slope, which is a big deal because slope impacts buildability. You can also filter properties based on ones that are landlocked or not, or based on the amount of road frontage. Just stuff that, again, is super useful to land people, but a lot of other real estate investors don't care about it. So if you're in the land business at all, whether you're an investor or developer or agent or anything like that, it's pretty sweet. And for the cost of what it is, it's like cheaper than most other alternatives out there. So there you go. Those are my two things.
I love it. And the trains just started. I don't know if you saw my background light up as the first train went by.
No, I didn't notice. I didn't hear anything. Must not be too loud.
So with these projects, how does it work? Are you there more developing it and you're more the marketing arm and helping refine it? Is that kind of how the partnerships work?
On both of them, really, Stride and the land portal. The thing that I bring to the table is a bit of it is just the UX software expertise, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that I know how to develop it, but I've just worked with so many different softwares over the years. And I have a pretty good eye for what others can do compared to the one that I'm looking at. And then also just what makes it easy to use. Sometimes the actual developer of the thing, it's very easy to lose sight of that when you're the person building it. So a lot of that kind of input, but also just the marketing side of it, just having the audience through REtipster. There's just a pretty wide reach of land people that it's a very relevant audience to both of those software products. That it's a big deal for me to do this, either one, because I don't like to lock myself into things. I want to be able to just tell people this is the best thing, or this is the good and the bad of this thing. So the fact that I'm doing that at all, I got to think it's pretty darn good in order to lock myself to one of these things. And they're both awesome.
I don't want to call you a perfectionist because I don't know if you think that's positive or negative, but
that's fair.
I know you pretty well, and anything you produce is absolute A+ quality. So I'm sure these projects will go great. I think you're in a really cool position because, so like Mayor Shemtov, he came up with the land emails software. And so he goes to Sumner, and like he's got the audience, he's got the marketing arm, and he's got a whole suite of software now. And I love when I see those partnerships happen because it's such a good example of how collaboration, where with collaboration, everyone can win, including the end user. Because the end user pays like $100 a month, and they get to use something that took you guys years to develop.
Yeah. It's a big thing that I've learned over the past couple of years is, I guess, just the power of partnerships with the right people. And I used to just be like anti-partnership. No, I don't want to do that. Like I had a couple bad experiences, never again. And I realized like how much I was flushing down the toilet by having that attitude. Cause man, I mean, if you find the right person, like it's amazing what you can do that you could never do on your own. So finding those geniuses to work with is a pretty big deal for, like I think you said, not just me, but like the end user too.
It takes a while to like work through who is a good partner and who's not. Like I was just talking with Ajay yesterday, and I told him, I said, I think my ideal operator from a funder's standpoint is like the introverted, consistent, dependable, frugal type of person, because I've just seen the best results with them.
Yeah.
But hey, let's wrap it up. I think we both got to go.
Yeah.
So you talked about your two projects. Any other links or any other way that people can get a hold of you if they want?
Yeah. So REtipster.com, if you've never been there, that's kind of like the home base where everything is at. That's the blog, but it's also hooked up to the podcast and YouTube. So just REtipster.com, RE for real estate, not REI tipster, REtipster.com. And if you are on social media, and if you look for REtipster anywhere, you'll find me and you can connect with me there too.
I love it. Seth, thank you for your time. And again, I love your sidewall there.
Thanks.
If you guys are watching on YouTube, check out his sidewall. Maybe we can drop a link in the show notes for where he got that, because it's soundproof or sound absorbing and decorative at the same time.
Yeah, but I got it from a company called Automute. REtipster.com/AUDIMUTE.
Oh, awesome. You have an affiliate link. I love
10% discount if you go through that.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. I know your time is valuable. So always love having a conversation with you, and might as well press record at the same time. Until next time.
Thanks, Drew. See ya.
All right. That's it for today. I hope this conversation got you thinking and maybe even questioning a few things. And that's the point. This isn't about having all the answers. It's about figuring it out together. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to keep exploring these ideas, make sure to subscribe and follow me over at theothersideofenough.com. Let's keep the conversation going and see you next time.